FBI, as well as the local county who participated. But there's some conflicting reports about evidence. Ultimately, what we've learned is that no charges have been brought forth in this case. I had the opportunity to speak with his grandmother when I was in DC. Take a look.
We also understand quite clearly
able to come to not find this murderer guilty in High Point, North Carolina.
He was at a funeral on November the 8th, and there was a shooting on one side of the church, and there was another shooting, which the other shooting was Officer Hill, and he shot him 5 times, the back, the side, and the leg. And in the midst of him shooting Frederick, he saved 2 people's life. 2 people. He pushing these 2 people in the church while this officer gunned him down like he wasn't a human being. And they wasn't shooting on that side of the church. And he has 2 children. That police officer took my baby/grandma life for nothing. No drugs, no gun, no nothing, no game. He was innocent. And they allow him to kill him and say he's not guilty. How can the system fail us like that?
Tanika Shannon, the mother of Fred Cox.
On Sunday, November 8th, 2020, my only child, Fred Cox, was murdered in a church by undercover detectives as he ran out of his car to save a mother and her son from gunfire that ignited on the opposite side of the church.
You know, and as you hear the story, I know there's a lot of questions that may come up, right? Why was there gunfire happening at the church in the first place? According to reports, apparently it was a gang that was responding to the person whose funeral Fred was attending. And then also, why was a deputy there shooting? What I've learned in researching this case is that apparently the deputy was there undercover. And so when you think about a deputy being there undercover and innocent people being caught in gunfire and no charges being brought up, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it quite adds up then.
Yes, Georgia. This case, I first found out about this case while with Roland Martin. He was speaking to the mother as well, and to hear the pain, it's a mixture of pride I can hear, but also clearly the pain, because their son and their grandson, Frederick, he jumped and leaped into action and literally saved the lives of 2 people, sacrificing his own life. And you could just hear it there. To understand the cause of his death has got to be the insult to injury, when you consider that it was so unnecessary because of where it took place, how it took place, and the fact that it was an undercover police officer who should have had better training, the ability to ascertain the situation versus create the situation where he ended up taking the life, and then no justice on top of it. Georgia, enough is enough.
Well, and from a media standpoint, I always look at the narratives that were put out. It's almost been a year. And initially, there were accusations that Fred had a gun. And if you go back and you look at the investigation that was done by the SBI, they determined he did not have a gun. And so it is there's a huge contrast in narrative when you look on one side and there's these accusations that he had a gun and he was shooting back, versus Fred Cox was a hero who saved the life of a 12-year-old boy and his mother.
That's right.
You're painting 2 very different pictures.
That's right.
One that evokes empathy and compassion, one that is the story of a hero, and the other that's the story that we always see that allows for a grand jury to produce no indictment against the
That's right.
officer
That's right.
because it paints a picture as though maybe he was responsible for what happened to him, that he deserved what happened to him, that what happened to him was justified.
Hmm.
But nowhere in that narrative and what was portrayed to the grand jury resembled anything that really counted to the fact that he helped save not only a 12-year-old boy's life, but also the life of that boy's mother.
That's right. That's right. And Georgia, it's so many times that they have to, and they being the system, this system of criminal justice, if we want to call it that, this injustice system has perfected the art of vilifying the victims, especially when we're black, and precisely when we're black men. Um, they're so used to doing this. Um, they're used to getting away with it because there's a level of dehumanization that has to accompany black lives for the police to be able to continuously to get away with this. That's just the bottom line. Because if America for a moment has an epiphany of empathy and to actually see us as human beings, well, then that breaks through the hermetically sealed bubble of this dehumanization that black people have been living under in this country for a very long time.
Mm, 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 mm. Well, Ben, I know that you've been tracking a story this morning as well.
Yeah, we're following Joe Biden and this fight against the filibuster, or the fight that may be coming with the filibuster. Joe Biden did a town hall last week, and he gave the impression that he's going to take a different approach with the filibuster, hinting towards the fact that he may be willing to actually undo it. Now, everyone who's following this on the political level, you understand that the filibuster is being used as an impediment to voting rights. It's being used as an impediment to this infrastructure bill. It's being used as an impediment to literally everything that's a part of Joe Biden's agenda. And so we have been screaming at the top of our lungs, rhetorically speaking, when are you going to do away with the filibuster? Let's take a listen to Joe Biden at last week's town hall.
When it comes to voting rights,
is equally as consequential.
when it comes to voting rights, just so I'm clear, though, you would entertain the notion of doing away with the filibuster on that one issue. Is that correct?
And maybe more.
And maybe other issues.
Now, it's the and maybe more. We need him to do more than make a consideration, because when we consider the Republican opposition to literally everything, there's nothing that the Republicans are going to stand in solidarity or in bipartisanship with the Democrats on, as evidenced by this next clip. Georgia, you've been following this along with us. Joe Manchin is standing in the way of the Democratic Party. He is a Democrat, ostensibly, who's standing against the Democratic agenda in the form of Joe Biden's agenda. That said, Joe Manchin is considered to be too compromising for Republicans. And so when we have this conversation about bipartisanship, and we have this conversation about, can we get 10 Republicans to come over so that we don't have to do away with the filibuster? I want America to really understand that even Joe Manchin, who is the bane of our existence, who is, for all intents and purposes, a turncoat and a Republican, he is too radical for Republicans. Let's take a listen into this clip.
Actually had talked to Joe Manchin about some of the ballot protection issues, yet the Joe Manchin compromise was trying to get to the floor. Democrats were blocked by a filibuster of Republicans, not even letting it get to the floor. How do you feel about voting rights? You supported reenacting the voting rights bill when you were a House member in 2006.
And I would again extend the voting rights bill. The voting rights bill hasn't been repealed. The 14th and 15th Amendment haven't been repealed.
Yeah, but the Supreme Court decision in 2013 basically gutted it.
You know, I was both a local election official and the chief election official for our state for a combined total of about 20 years. There are 10,000 election jurisdictions out there in America. The federal government deciding how elections should be run in all 10,000 of those jurisdictions is a bad idea. And I don't think Senator Manchin was surely fully on board with the supposed compromise. It was a compromise between the left and the far left. You still had matching funding of $6 for every dollar raised for House members. I like Joe Manchin, but I'm not driven by the Joe Manchin standard of whether something's a good deal or not. This was clearly a federal takeover of elections. It was not doing things around the edges of elections that direct the country in a more significant way, and I'm opposed to it. There's no right way to do the wrong thing, and federal government taking over elections is the wrong thing to do.
Now, that was Senator Roy Blunt making it clear that when we get to the bottom line, we're not talking about the infrastructure, Georgia. We're not talking about the budget. We're not talking about reconciliation. We're talking about the very fundamental tenet of being able to vote in this democracy. Republican Senator Roy Blunt is making it clear that they are not willing to compromise, even with Joe Manchin. And Joe Manchin has made it clear that he's not willing to compromise with the Democrats because he wants to be bipartisan with Republicans. So we have a little quandary here, don't we? Republicans have shown that they are completely refusing to do anything that's good for humanity. And Joe Manchin is saying, well, I'm going to wait for Republicans to come to their senses. And then we have Joe Biden saying, we're going to wait for Joe Manchin to come to his senses. The absurdity of it all, Georgia. But I give it to you to take a look
Yeah,
at.
I mean, at this point, we have talked so much about cinema and Manchin and the filibuster. If Biden can't, cancel the filibuster, if he can't get that outlawed, we need to really start looking at how do we fill those seats. Because at this point, we need solutions and we need them fast. The vote for the Black community is under attack. And we have
That's right.
seen a digression of our voting rights. We've seen suppression of our voting rights. And so, I mean, they're not going to cooperate.
They're not.
They've shown that over and over again.
That's right.
And the more time that passes without any intervention or without Biden stepping up to the plate and actually doing something, the more time that passes, I feel like the more rights we are giving up.
Exactly.
And so at this point, I just feel like there has to be some galvanizing and organizing to position new individuals to take their seats. I
That's right.
mean, at some point, there has to be a strategy and solution to move forward because I feel like we're at a stalemate.
No, that's absolutely where we are, and it's a little bit worse. It is a stalemate, but it's a stalemate that benefits the conservative side of the equation.
Absolutely.
Republicans are getting what they want, right? And then we have this stalemate because we can't move past the filibuster. Joe Biden, he said he's going to think about it. Well, I think it should be clear that if he wants to get anything done, and that's the real question, right? A lot of times we take a look at this season, the first 100 days and then the next 100 days leading up to the midterms, that kind of horse race comparison of a presidency. How good did Joe Biden do in his first 100 days? Well, at this point, we get the sneaky suspicion that they're trying to run out the clock and get to the midterm election when everyone is going to be in such a tizzy over whether or not who's going to get elected to this seat. No one is going to be focused on the fact that they went an entire 2 years and didn't deliver on behalf of Black people who delivered on behalf of Joe Biden.
And that's a shame. But this is the America that we live in. And so even when people aren't deliberately discriminating against us, there's a quote that says justice delayed is justice denied. And so you don't have to hate us or do anything to deliberately discriminate against us.
That's right.
But if you're standing in the way of the progress of people or just even the basic rights of people, this is our right as Americans. We have the right to get out and vote just like anybody else. And because we're not going to vote for you, you want to come up with some strategy to try to make it difficult for us to vote for somebody else.
That's right.
You
That's
don't
right.
at the end of the day, the democracy is supposed to be about the people electing who we want to represent us. And that's not really what's happening. Not authentically, not organically are people getting into these seats because the people put them there. No, it's because there are politicians who are playing this game, who are coming up with a strategy
That's
so
right.
that they can win.
That's right. All around us, every aspect of it. We're getting ready to go into the redistricting, and we're going to see gerrymandering like we've never seen before because Republicans are all in. Now, listen, it's not just Republicans. Democrats do this too. They just don't do it as good as Republicans do it, right? They're not as cutthroat or Machiavellian as Republicans. And so this is a game that Democrats are decidedly not capable of playing. but yet and still they engage in it, and they leave space for Republicans to do this because maybe one day in the future they're going to want to gerrymander a little bit better, or maybe in the future they'll use the filibuster to their advantage. But that's never the case. If you look at this, the ball is always moving decidedly towards the right, towards fascism. And Democrats are still standing by and saying, well, maybe if we just hold on to the filibuster, maybe if we just hold on to all of these policies and all of this bipartisanship, maybe it'll work for us one day. How's that working out for you, Joe Biden?
Yeah, and how is that working out for you, America? Like, this game that they're playing is affecting the day-to-day lives of American citizens. And it's
Mm,
unfortunate that uh, political leaders who are elected to represent the people are so occupied playing a game that
yeah.
they're not serving the people who got them elected into the position that they hold.
Mm,
And it's funny, I think that in some degree, power is a social construct. And a lot of these political leaders, you see them that they're so drunk on their own power
that's right.
that they forget the true power is in the people. The
Mm,
people have the power.
mm,
And so they can continue to play these games and, put off passing equitable voting rights.
that's right.
But at the end of the day, if they don't want to see what happened in 2020, that global uprising, if they don't want to see that happen again, they don't want to see the people hit to the streets and take their power back.
Mm,
They have to start making some progress,
yeah.
because if this system continues to prove that it cannot work for people who look like you and me, there will be another 2020
Mm.
sooner than what you think.
And the thing is, Georgia, to add on top of that is that without question, the results of these powerful politicians who are using that power to suppress the people, it inevitably hurts the people. Coming up in the 8:30 segment, we're going to be the Benjamin Dixon segment. We're going to be discussing what's happening in Wisconsin, because they're at the point in Wisconsin where now they're extending the hours for labor from children.
Mm.
14-year-olds, extending it to midnight, where they're now going to be getting everything that they need out of. These are policies that hurt the people, and it's all because of powerful politicians trying to maintain that power. And it's oftentimes at the detriment of the very people who vote for these politicians. So we're going to be discussing that coming up in the next segment.
Before we move on, I just have to say that's absurd,
Yeah,
that our country has demoralized itself to a place where we are willing to accept child labor
yeah.
as a means to fulfill our needs in our labor industry. But I digress.
Mm,
Um, Speaking of youth, there are 5 youth who have been participating in a hunger strike in DC, and it's all for climate justice. Take a
mm.
listen.
We also understand quite clearly that we are fossil fuel abolitionists in the spirit of abolitionists that have come before us, in the spirit of Sojourner Truth, in the spirit of Harriet Tubman, in the spirit of Frederick Douglass. I am sure that Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, and Frederick Douglass, if they were negotiating how to end slavery, they would not invite slave traders to the abolitionist movement, especially slave traders who are currently owning slaves. And so because you continue to work with the fossil fuel industry, it is outrageous that you think that we can believe what you are doing.
I'm State Representative Attica Scott, and I'm out here in front of the White House standing with hunger strikers who are demanding action on our climate from President Joe Biden.
My muscles are weak, and we know how much is at stake. I just asked John Kerry why the presidency isn't using their full powers to deliver on their climate justice promises, and he made excuses for Joe Biden. He said that there are complications in the Senate and that there's private sector money out there. I'm disappointed. I'm angry.
There's complications in the Senate. Private sector money is not going to save us. The American government is the most powerful institution in the world, and you all need to step up and take responsibility for this.
Joe Biden can and needs to be doing far more to get the full legislative federal climate policy that we need right now, and that he himself has promised us. Will he let Joe Manchin write his climate policy, or will he deliver?
So there we have. It started out as just 5 youth sitting in front of the White House demanding that President Joe Biden include some piece of legislation for climate justice in his Build Back Better initiative, right? And now those 5 youth who are participating in this hunger strike have been joined by different political leaders, as you saw, other young activists, as well as this is Reverend Yearwood here that you're taking a look at now. But it's all about climate justice. And when you see the oil spills, you see the wildfires, you
That's right.
see the icebergs melting, what they're asking for is some mitigation, some policies that would be put in place that would ensure that this planet will still be here by the time
That's
they
right.
have children.
That's right. That's right. And that's the determining factor for a lot of young people, whether or not they're going to have children. I mean, it's starting to seem irresponsible to bring children into a world that the leaders are, on a collision course with oblivion. I mean, we only have one planet. And no matter how much technology the billionaires and oligarchs try to throw into space, the fact is they won't survive there any longer than we'll survive here if we don't get some actual action. And Georgia, you said it a moment ago. You said that these policies, it's wasting time. And or the lack of policies or the games that they're playing, it's wasting time. And this is the most, I think this is the most meaningful example of how much time we don't have.
Yeah.
We got to act. And these kids are out here. They're absolutely right, because you think about it, like it's not just going to be climate disaster for the entire globe, which is bad enough, but we do know that climate justice matters because it's going to hurt us the most in the Black community and in marginalized communities.
That's right. That's right. Well, we are on the clock. Stick around for more on the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Good morning, everybody. Y'all know who it is. Y'all know the voice. Y'all know the sound. It's your boy, James Bubba Williams. DJ Exclusive is in the building, y'all. Good morning. Y'all get your tea, your coffee, whatever it is you need to get your morning started, y'all. More coming up next.